article, activekids.com, that 8 kid snacks that are shockingly unhealthy. Shockingly.
Shockingly. I'm going to be shocked over this. Hello, and welcome to Middleish, the podcast about moderation in all things. I am Erin Green.
And I am Michael Gray.
Hello.
Hello, Erin. How are you?
I am doing well.
Yeah? I'm glad to be here. I was
Very
telling
good.
Erin before we officially kicked this off, I feel like it's been it hasn't been that long, but it feels like a long time since we've done this. So I'm excited to be here. As opposed to usual, I'm like, but today.
Yeah, getting that third cup of coffee just to get you through this. I know.
It is earlier than normal.
Yes.
But that's all right. I got kids, so, I'm kind of used to it.
Yeah.
I guess. How's things?
Well, and summertime, your summer schedule is probably pretty crazy. Kids all over. And
yeah, because everybody's on vacation except me.
Yeah. And so then you're like the routine. I have so many friends with school-age kids that are like, summertime is really fun. There's a lot of activities.
Mm-hmm.
They enjoy having a little more free time with their kids, but then they still have like their schedule that they've worked so hard to get nice and, like they're predictable, and all of a sudden shit goes out the window and they're just like, okay, I love this, but I also hate it.
Yeah, it's tricky.
So to all the parents out there listening, we see you.
Yes.
And have fun with your kids this summer, but also know that it is totally okay for you to be relieved when school starts again in the fall.
Yes. And just some advice that I have found helpful, and you may already be doing this, but if not, I have found that carving out like a few 10, 15, 20 minute like little interactions during the workday of just real intentional energy and focus and attention goes a long way. Like you give them 10, 15 minutes of like dialed in and they're good. They'll leave you, they'll let you work for a while. They'll leave you alone, not bother you. And in the afternoon, give them some more time. It really helps. Just like phone down, only them. Let's go. And then they're good for a while. So
I like that. That's really good advice.
Hey, I have it every now and then.
Nice job, Michael.
Thanks.
Yeah. I know. Give yourself a pat on the back. And I think this is, it's funny that we kind of started on this topic about parents and kids and conversations, because a lot of what we'll talk about today has to do with like feeding kids and kind of that theme, because, well, if those of you who listened to our February episode, Fear Factor, this is a sequel and
part 2.
You might have noticed how animated Michael and I got talking about these influencers, and that we were both just like, man, we should really do an episode highlighting the low of the lowest, like
the bottom scum, feeder influencers.
The scum on the like boil on the butt of social media, which is those influencers who prey on parents of children.
Yeah, butt boil scum. That's what they are. Butt boil scum.
Butt boil scum.
We're going to talk about the BBSs
of TikTok and Instagram. Welcome to our show.
Welcome to the show. Yeah. So we did this in February, and we had a pretty good outline of things we'd like to talk about. And I don't think we got through half of it, because I think if anything is going to get Erin and I off on a ranty tangent, it's this kind of stuff. It's people just, like really fear-mongering around food and making things more difficult and more confusing, and just like accuse you of like murdering your family slowly. Like it's just insane and ridiculous and so incredibly like harmful, and often like not even accurate. So this could be the same situation.
I know. So,
and I think we'll probably do this, I don't know, twice a year, maybe? Fear Factor. It feels like it should just be a recurring thing.
So, yeah,
it never ends.
So endless material. So much fodder out there. And I make it a point not to follow these accounts because I don't I want to pick and choose when I allow that negativity into my life, you know?
Right.
So if I have to be on social media for work reasons, or if I want to like unwind for personal reasons on social media, I don't want to be having that like visceral response watching some dumbass influencer,
Mm-hmm.
you know, saying something that is harmful
Yeah.
and misinformed
Yeah.
and misleading. So I tend to find these from people who I follow that have really good content, but their content is geared toward
Mm-hmm.
like highlighting this misinformation and pointing it out. So
Yeah.
that's how
So
I find them.
I always wreck my algorithm when like we do stuff like this because like I go to certain people's pages that I know of, you know, to like find like specific
Yes.
content or a video I saw or something stitched or whatever. But then for like the next 2 weeks, it's like they're constantly popping up because, you know, TikTok or Instagram's like, hey,
Mhm.
you went to these people's page. Obviously, you want to see it. It's like, oh man,
Yeah.
I
So you
gotta
got to
wade through this
retrain the
shit.
algorithm, yeah,
Yeah,
to
exactly.
get to weed out the crap again.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, I know how
Yeah.
that goes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, well, let's just start with the probably the most inflammatory one that I have found yet. And this
All right.
is
Just gonna go
from
gasoline right on the fire, right from the start.
we're just
Here
gonna
we
go
go.
straight, we're gonna go straight to booby. So so Bobby is this influencer. His TikTok and Instagram is Flav City. Don't go watch his shit. Just don't.
Mm-mm.
But I'm just telling you because I actually one of my good friends that I ride with regularly just commented the other day. We were talking about my own, you know, social media
Mm-hmm.
accounts and kind of how I want to grow them and do different content and you know what to do. And she's like, "Oh, you should go look at like there's these people that walk around grocery stores and like talk about food products and they have like millions of views. There's this one guy that you know, I've seen some of his videos and I was just like,
Like,
please don't
do
tell me
not,
it's
don't
Flame
you
City.
dare say it.
And I was like, oh God, please don't tell me it's Bobby from Flav City. And he talks about all the ingredients you should not be eating. And she's
Uh-huh.
like, yeah, I think that's him. She's like, I'm not saying he's good or he's right, but he's got something because he gets hundreds of thousands of views on every video. And I'm just like, I mean, we're climbing a hill, like I'm out of breath. And I found the energy to rant against this guy in the middle of the ride because I was like, this guy is full of shit. So the algorithm works the way it's intended, which is to put things in front of you that you seem to show interest in.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with this, and we talked about this in the first Fear Factor episode, the problem is people tend to be motivated by fear, and we tend to be programmed to look for and identify fearful things and threats more
Mm-hmm.
than we will positive influences or helpful information or safe information. And so, unfortunately, we will look toward these different, you know,
Yeah.
this different content that instills fear. And that's how Flav City has made his platform, is by
Mm-hmm.
showing people all these things they should be afraid of.
Right.
And there's one video in particular that I found when we were planning the first episode that I was like, oh my gosh, this guy had, and as Food Science Babe says, he clearly has no idea what he's talking about. And
Yeah.
I mean, she's a food scientist. So the premise of the video is pretty short. He is going through baby formulas. And I said in the first episode that I think I didn't say the scum of the boil on the butt of social media, but that's
Uh-huh.
pretty accurate. People who prey on parents
Yeah.
and target like child feeding and child nutrition, especially babies. I worked at WIC for 11 years. I know how parents are um, viscerally affected by
Mm-hmm.
like wanting to take care of their children and wanting to do the best by their children and their babies.
Yeah.
He's
But
talking about
also, kind of just interrupt real quick, like, but
yeah.
also they're exhausted and they're often financially strapped, and often there's just one
Mm-hmm.
of them. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's easy to say these things in like a vacuum, but as soon as you're like the reality of what it's like to be a parent and have children, like all of that goes out the window. You know what I mean? So I just wanted to throw that in there too.
Yes, thank you. That's a really good point. And I think that's why I get so upset with people preying on parents and preying on like the child nutrition aspect, because like you just pointed out, there's so much more to being a parent than making your child scratch made ketchup, or like, your own homemade popsicles, or like whatever the fuck else you get from social media. This guy was talking about infant formulas. So he's railing against like standard baby formulas, and he ends up because he says that they have GMO corn syrup in them. Well, they do have corn syrup in them. That's because it is affordable. We have corn subsidies in the US. And yes, we have GMO corn, but I think we established in the last discussion that GMO has morphed into this big scary thing,
Right.
when it actually is not a big scary thing. It has been shown to be safe for human ingestion. And so when we have certain products, and there are only, I think there's 9 products in the US that have GMO like component, like a counterpart. So there's non-GMO and there's GMO for like 9 food products in the US. So when you see people raving about this doesn't have GMOs, whatever, it's probably because there's no GMO counterpart. So just to say that.
It's like when you see like the jar of salsa that says gluten-free. It's like, well, why would there be gluten in this?
I know.
Doesn't even make sense.
Or pretzels that are labeled fat-free. And you're like, well, because pretzels are fat-free. Like,
yeah, because that's all of them.
Because okay. So he goes on to talk about these formulas and how bad they are and how it destroys baby's gut microbiome and all these things that I could pick apart everything he says as being, I mean, he talks about corn syrup is, quote, the opposite of glucose, when actually it's not, because it actually is the primary carbohydrate. And Food Science Babe does a great job of explaining this. The primary carbohydrate in corn syrup actually is made up of glucose. So it just needs to be broken apart into.
It's kind of like most sweeteners, right? It just all breaks down to glucose.
Yeah.
The body doesn't give a shit.
He goes on, so he sets the stage, right? Like, oh, the cows have been fed GMO soy and it has canola oil and all this other stuff. So then he goes to recommend these other formulas that are like $50 a can. And one of them still has sunflower oil as the main fat. And remember, these people really love to rail against seed oils.
Especially sunflower. Like they go hard.
But you have to do this. So he's like flashing the cans around in the grocery store. He's not like, he's like kind of showing you like little glimpses of the ingredients. But then I went to the website, like I went and looked up the brands he's recommending.
Yeah.
One of them is a toddler formula. This is important, people, because infants need specific nutrients in specific amounts in the right solution, meaning like the right amount of water to the nutrients, and like that osmolality matters. And when you recommend a toddler formula for an infant, you are likely to recommend malnutrition. And if it goes on for a long time without complementary foods, you're looking at severe malnutrition. So the fact that this guy just throws out there, buy this really expensive formula and it's a toddler formula, to me, that just, his credibility is completely gone at that point. I'm like, does he realize he's recommending a toddler formula?
Probably
I
not.
don't know.
I don't know that he knows there's a difference. I mean, I think like people like him, and I mean, so many of the people we'll talk about today, all of the scum on the butt boils, like they have a little bit of knowledge. Well, it's not knowledge. They have a little bit of information that is usually incorrect, right? And then they apply that in just all kinds of broad stroke ways, right? Like without any understanding of any of the chemistry behind it, being needs for different populations and demographics, limitations, accessibility. It's just like, oh, I heard this. And so now let me go do something real clickbaity to get likes and get attention and build, I don't even think these people are I don't know, maybe they have good intentions, but it sure seems like they're more interested in the explosion of responses, right? And so they just take this little bit of information that's usually incorrect and then just apply it in mass in all kinds of ways. And that's a really bad way to approach nutrition. That's a really bad way to think about what should I or should I not eat, because every one of us has very unique special circumstances. That's the way that's what it means to be a person, right? That's how we exist. And everybody's different, right? Like I'm a diabetic. I need to eat differently than someone who has, Crohn's disease, or someone who has whatever, right? Like that's just the way it works. And so they take these tiny bits of information and say, here is the specific recommendation for everyone. And immediately that is an indicator that someone's not thinking very critically, that someone's not really, the old thinker isn't working like it should. And as soon as someone's doing that kind of stuff, that to me, that's an immediate, like, no, just, they may say some accurate things. It's not worth wading through what's inaccurate and accurate, because you're probably going to get a lot of stuff that just really isn't thought through and is wildly inaccurate and misappropriately used. Misappropriately? That's not a right word. Inappropriately. Yeah, misappropriately.
Yeah.
I'm going to say misappropriately.
Probably a word.
Now who's the idiot?
I like new words. We make up words fairly regularly on here.
Like butt boil scum.
Butt boil scum. So just to follow up, there are 9 commercially available GMO crops in the US. So GMO, remember, just stands for genetically modified organism. It's going in and just like snipping a certain gene in an organism to, help it survive disease or drought, or help it adjust to our changing climate or something like that. So there's soybeans, corn, canola, cotton, alfalfa, sugar beets, summer squash, papaya, and potatoes. Those are kill you, the 9. Of them. Oh God!
Better not eat cotton.
Bobby, if Bobby had it his way, that's what he would tell you. But and I believe I pinned this article. I added it to our show notes for the last episode, but I'll add it again. It just talks about, GMO free. So I think one of the things that really gets me about these influencers is because I sat across from parents for years and talked to the parents. I'm picturing the parent on the other side of that video that's being told that what they're giving their child or their baby is harmful or poisonous or setting them up for a lifetime of health risk. And I'm thinking about, what is that parent feeling or thinking about themselves in this moment?
Right.
And as you pointed out, some parents have budget constraints, time constraints, resources, limited resources. And all of a sudden this parent is like, shit, I'm damaging my child because I'm giving them this stuff. And that is extra stress that the parent doesn't need. Parents have enough stuff to worry about. They do not need to have some bloviating butt boil influencer telling them to buy a $50 can of formula that's only going to last them like a week.
Yeah.
I just can't. I can't.
Yeah. And it's not even, it's like not even that, like, hey man, you're making people feel like guilty for doing what they can, but you're making people feel guilty for doing what they can, and you're not right. Like it's not even correct information. You know what I mean? It'd be one thing if it was like accurate and like, but it's not even accurate. It's just flat out wrong. So you have parents who are scared of like literally harming their children while they're like, my best effort is killing my child. And that's not even accurate. It's like, I mean, what a piece of shit.
Well, and despair has got to be like one of the worst feelings. And despair, I mean, generally will come from a situation where you feel like there is no solution. You have no control. You have no influence over what is unfolding in your life, and it's going down a bad road, and there is just absolutely no hope in changing it. That's what and I know some people might think like, oh, it's not that bad. It is, because I'm telling you, I've sat across from these parents and I've heard their stories, and I've heard the struggles. And if nothing can bring out empathy in me, then sitting across from a parent who is doing their very best and they are told by somebody that their best is not enough. And that is effed. It's totally messed up.
Yeah.
So,
and even if for you, it's like, it's not that bad. Great. Maybe it's not for you, but quit applying your situation to everybody else. Like that's one of the dumbest things we can do, is assume that my experience and limitations and strengths are everybody's. So if someone says it's not cool, maybe it's not cool to them. So how about you shut up and listen?
Yeah. So I have another Bobby one, if you want me to keep going on this Flav City
Yeah, we
rant.
can. This might be the rest of the episode. Like
So his latest one is him walking through a grocery store. So Flav City has this thing, Bobby approved, that he talks about ingredients that are Bobby approved, and he has this whole list, and I don't even know what it is, but you get the idea. We already highlighted some of it.
Clever
So
marketing.
he goes around the grocery store with his young daughter. I'm not sure her age. I'm guessing from the video she's 4,
5, maybe
5.
Yeah, pretty young.
And he's showing her these products and listing off the ingredients and saying, oh, this has this many grams of sugar. Is that Bobby approved? And she's like, no. And oh, this has all these starches in it. Are these Bobby approved? No. So he's teaching her, first of all, that his assessment of what is right and wrong is what she should always be following. He's also teaching her that these very specific ingredients should be completely eliminated from the diet. So he's teaching her severe restriction in the food world. Now,
obsession.
Yes.
Yeah.
And can I just point out that around this age, like up to age like 5, 6, like those young preschool years, is when the foundation of food beliefs are established and food attitudes. I know this from the research I've done on disordered eating and from being an expert in child nutrition, working in that field for over 11 years. This is a really formative time for that child to establish her food beliefs. And we have evidence that says parents who are hyper restrictive around food and have more food rules tend to impart poor self-regulation in their children. So children don't listen to their bodies and know how much to eat and know when they've had enough. And they also, children are more likely to gravitate toward, those foods that are being restricted. So the fact that my gosh, he got raked over the coals for that one in the social media world, because there are all these dietitians, doctors, child psychologists that are out there going, first of all, you're exploiting your child for clicks. Secondly, what you're teaching her is to, you're grooming her to be hyper focused on food and possibly even develop something like orthorexia, like this hyper focus on health of food. And it's not even based in fact. It's disgusting.
Yeah. It's when you played that video for me, my thought was, oh, we're seeing like the birth of an eating disorder. Like, here we go. Here's where it starts, right?
Yeah.
I mean, she's going to be 30 years old. I remember my dad dragging me through the grocery store and making me say, this stuff. And I mean, the obsession of can I just say that unless you have like a real intolerance or allergy or something, something specific you need to look out for, you don't need to go to the grocery store and look at ingredients. Like, you don't need to read through those to see if a food is safe for you to eat or okay for you to eat or for your children to eat. It's just okay. Like, yeah, you want to, sure, we want to get lots of fruits and vegetables. Absolutely. We all do, because that's good for us, right? But we can eat Cheetos and popsicles and cookies too, and everything's going to be just fine. You're not poisoning your child. You're not poisoning anyone. So yeah, we can just knock that off.
Yes. And the other option, not only could she realize the damage that's been done and have to work through that at a later time, the other option is that she follows in his footsteps and continues promoting this misinformation and continues that fear-mongering for the next generation of parents, which is equally as vile. And
Yeah.
damaging.
Yeah.
In
And that's what
fact,
most of
might
us
even
do,
be,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, as parents, and I am not a parent, but as parents, as adults, we influence our
Hmm.
child's belief system, their behaviors, their attitudes toward food. And what I think what really gets me about this is he doesn't seem to have any regard in this video for her, like talking about like what she likes or tastes, or asking her opinion, like trying
Hmm.
to help instill any kind of like autonomy or critical thinking. And as you pointed out, she is like completely disinterested in this,
She
like,
does
Dad,
not
why do
care
you,
what's happening at
yeah.
all. She's like, why are you ruining our trip to the store?
Like,
And I'm not going to say what he said because I don't know, like beforehand, but it sure seems like he's like, hey, when I ask you this question, just say no. Because she's like not paying attention at all. And then he says something, she's like, no, and then goes back to twirling and like, like 4 or 5, like, I don't give a shit what you're
yeah,
talking about, Dad. Shut up.
yeah,
You know? Yeah.
yeah. um and just again to point out that hyper restriction for children does not work. So when we see parents, you know I can get on board with parents wanting to see their children eat nutritious foods,
Hmm.
to want to see, to understand like, hey, my child gravitates toward, say, starches and carbohydrates and doesn't eat enough protein. I understand the concerns there. And there are qualified professionals that can help with that while preserving the integrity of food relationship and allowing your child to explore all foods in a
Hmm.
very safe and autonomous way with you as their guide. But we see over and over that pressure and restriction do not work with child feeding. They just
Hmm.
don't work. We see that children are less likely to regulate their appetite that way and actually pay attention to what their body's telling them. And we tend to see like a more um you know affinity toward some of those highly palatable foods that are restricted. And remember, sugar is highly palatable,
Hmm.
especially for kids. And
Hmm.
so when we're super restricting, sweet foods and those reward foods and whatever, you're creating this foundation of belief that like, oh, I need to eat those whenever they're available. Oh, and I need to eat all I can get because I'm not
Hmm.
allowed to have, like, any adult who has food relationship issues can relate to what I'm saying right now.
Yep.
And I bet you it started somewhere in childhood. So,
Yep. Yep. In fact, it's interesting, like, talking to clients who really struggle with their relationship with food, how often they have like very specific memories from childhood around, comments about their food, rules around food, comments, about their bodies. Like it matters what you say.
mhm.
It matters like how you just structure things because kids don't know, like kids, they just believe in their parents, right? They're the adults, they know what's going on. I trust them, I love them, they're right. And so when you have things set in place for years, like kids, they don't even think to question it, like my parents right. And so like if you're an adult with kids listening to this, like think about the struggles you've had with food and where those stem from, and then go, am I in any way unintentionally imparting this or similar things to my child? Because you probably are, and that's not a judgment. That's just, let's be real about it, right? Like I am constantly going, like saying things and being like, wait, what am I? Oh, I'm communicating this to my child. Hold on, let's back up.
Mm,
I said this, but that's not what I meant, right? Like it's not a judgment because I mean, I'm screwing this up all the time. But I think if we're aware of it, when we realize we do it, let's go correct it. Because otherwise, we're going to probably not even to the same degree that you had it, probably even more so, because these things kind of work like they kind of compound, right? Um, the kid's going to have a very messed up backwards relationship with food just like you did. So it's really important to take some time and be aware of what am I communicating, what are the things I'm saying, verbally or just through actions or rules or guidelines or whatever, and how do those things play out, down their life. What am I setting them up for? Am I setting them up
yes.
to restrict and obsess and count and measure. And, like, am I setting them up to that, or am I setting them up to trust their body a little bit better than I did so that they can hand that down to the next generation?
Yeah. Yeah. And to your point, children tend to be very black and white, concrete thinkers. They want
Yeah.
boundaries, rules, like they need to know this is good, this is bad. So they have that dichotomous thinking, and the more nuanced, spectrum, gray area kind of thinking, and that critical thinking really doesn't come into play until later on in their brain development.
Yeah.
So as parents, it's our job to find the nuance. So when we hear things about sugar is bad, like we get all of this messaging, sugar in kids is so bad, we need to limit added sugars. I get questions from parents all the time about limiting added sugars for their children.
Yeah.
And my messaging is, well, first of all, we need to look at the entire context of the diet. So if your child is eating a large amount of sugary foods as snacks, or skipping meals in favor of sugary foods, that kind of stuff, then we need to maybe create some boundaries around, we had, like, example, my same friend that was talking about like the Flave City video, we were talking about how sometimes, like, how do you do that? Like, how do you impart like healthy behaviors on kids, but without teaching them that, like, quote, sugar is bad, or you've had too much sugar? And my suggestion was, well, okay, let's say you went to the zoo with your kids and they had cotton candy and caramel corn and all these snacks and whatever. And then they come home and they want like a popsicle before dinner or something. All you have to say is something to the effect of, well, we're going to have this for dinner. We're going to have these foods. You don't have to say, oh, we've had enough sugar for the day.
Right.
Or you don't have to say that's bad or that's too much.
Right.
All you have to say is like, I would like some different flavors, or we're going to have these foods for dinner. And we can have a popsicle tomorrow. Like, that's all you have to say.
Yeah.
So just helping children understand that, like, first of all, you're the one who's the menu planner. And like you said, Michael, they look to the parent for this guidance. You don't have to place judgment on food, and you don't have to teach them that, quote, sugar is bad or you can't have too much. All you have to do is create the right environment and just explain, like, we need nutrients from other foods too.
Right.
Like, all foods are good and we need to, get a little more variety. Or, hey, mom would like to have, like, teach them that your preferences as a parent are just as important as their preferences as a child.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Well, and two, we had this experience with Sophie just recently, she's just kind of been in a phase where it's just like, I just want to eat sweets and, like that kind of stuff. And she had a couple days where she had just a really larger than normal amount of sweet foods and felt sick in the evening, And so we talk about that. Hey, do you remember the other day, like when you had several sweet things throughout the day, do you remember how you felt at the end of the day? Like, yeah, I felt my tummy hurt. Yeah. Like, that's your body saying, okay, maybe we need some other things in here aside from just these, like, let's listen to our bodies and what it's communicating with us. And
I love that.
These things are great to eat. They're fun to eat, but too much of anything could, maybe not be the best thing. And your body's telling you, like, oh, can we back off on that and maybe have some other stuff, And so just moments like, I think some people would freak out about the fact that there were a few days where she ate a bunch of sugary stuff. One, no day in your life can be so important with the food you eat that it's going to ruin or set up. I mean, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
One day does not matter. Also, it's been a great learning experience for her to go like, oh, my body's talking to me. Like when I eat a lot of, fruit snacks and popsicles and, grab some candy out of the pantry, then my body says, that hurts our tummy. That's like too much, just kind of feel sick. What a wonderful learning experience for them to go like, oh, my body's communicating to me what I need or don't need or what it wants. I mean, that's a great thing. So to have these moments where it seems like you could freak out about it, I don't know, maybe it's a really good opportunity to learn from it. Maybe it's a good opportunity to like let your kids explore and discover things, because when we have the opportunity to explore and discover, we get to learn, right? Like if we have like hard and fast guidelines around food and restrictions. Like kids aren't learning anything. They're just trying to tick the boxes. It's like when we have really restrictive diets, right? We're not learning anything about ourselves. We're not learning how to trust our bodies or eat better or anything like that. We're just learning to tick the boxes. And anything outside of that, we're lost. That's the way kids are, right? Like if we have these very rigid rules around food, then they're not learning how to trust their bodies or what different foods do or how the positives that different foods can have, including sweets, right? They're just learning, oh, just tick the boxes. Whereas if we can explore and do things where, oh, I kind of felt sick after that, and we can talk about it, then we're actually learning how to be more intuitive and eat more, just kind of in response to what our body's communicating with us.
I love that. And one more point on that, that the parent's attitude towards certain foods really can impact the child's like self-evaluation of eating. So if the parent makes comments about sugar or too much of this, or this is a bad food or whatever, the child, and this is as young, I'm looking at a study from 4.5 years to 6.5 years old. These are young children. These aren't teenagers. This happens at a young age where children are observing and they're looking to the parent for certain modeling and messaging, and to have this like fear imparted on them about certain foods can really impact their self-evaluation of choosing the foods. And then we get into the morality of choosing certain foods, which these fear mongers, the scummy butt boils of social media are really good about. You're a bad person, you're evil, and you're
killing
an evil
your children.
Parent. Yes.
It's so fucked up.
Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So just know that like your children will internalize this and they will, oh.
Well, that's the thing about like fear around food is fear around food and morality with food, they go hand in hand. Like you don't ever have to connect them. They obviously go together. If there's something that you are supposed to be afraid of because it's bad, what does that say if we eat those things? Like it doesn't even need to be communicated. It's obvious, right? And kids make that connection. And so instantly, if there's foods to be afraid of, then there's a hierarchy of foods and there's morality built into them. And you're a good person if you eat these, and you're a bad person if you eat these. It's not like any kind of big leap. It just makes sense. Those things go hand in hand. So as soon as there's like, oh, don't eat these because this is bad, this is scary, then your kids go, oh, okay, so my worth, my morality as a person is at least in part like decided by what I choose to eat. And again, eating disorder in the making, right? Like as just like that. That's how quick it happens. That's how easy it happens.
Yeah.
Okay. Well.
Did you have
yeah.
I have some more examples, but let's go to one of yours.
Well, yeah. So let's keep it on the topic of kids. Maybe this would just be the whole episode is about kids. I had some other stuff from a few dumbasses.
Oh, but we can do another episode on
that's what's funny is like
the butt boils of TikTok.
Every time we do a fear factor episode, we're going to add things, but still not to get to everything. This list is just going to get longer and longer. We're never going to get to everything. We'll have to do like a 4-hour episode. Okay. So this is from activekids.com. An article, 8 kid snacks that are shockingly unhealthy, right? Like not even just unhealthy, but it's going to blow your mind how bad these are. Okay, so so first one is applesauce.
Oh my gosh.
Like of all the things.
I recommend this all the time.
Applesauce. And the reasoning is because like a lot of applesauces added a little sugar to like make it a little more palatable, right? Like a little more delicious, right? Because plain applesauce, I like it, but I get why people don't. It's not like super interesting, right? So a little sugar, kids eat it more. They're getting they're getting good fiber. They're getting all the vitamins and nutrients and minerals of, apples and that kind of stuff. And a little bit of sugar's not going to hurt anybody. But this is, one of the top 8 shockingly unhealthy things that a kid can eat, applesauce. Yeah.
And the headline sets the stage, doesn't it? So when we
Uh-huh.
get these messages from social media or from like a website, a lot of it is like to really get that fear and that kind of, scare tactic going. And this happens right in the headline.
Mhm.
I love the second. I mean, all of these, I'm just like shaking my head because again, I get that parents want to see their children eating nutrient dense
Sure.
foods. I get that. And I do have some really great influencers you can follow that do a beautiful job of illustrating this in their content without instilling fear
Right.
into the parent or the child. At the same time, I look at all of these foods and I'm like, these can totally fit into a healthy eating pattern. And eating is not just about health. Let
Right.
me say it again. It is not just about the nutrition value of the
Yeah.
food. There's lots of different reasons we eat, and there are lots of different reasons children eat. So,
Hmm. Yeah. It's okay to enjoy things you eat. Like
totally
that's
okay.
that's really all right. Number two, yogurt. So, I mean, first of all, like it's yogurt's a pretty good source of protein, right? It's got a lot of good stuff in it. So the again, I mean, all of these, the reason is the sugar in them. Like that's the only reason that they're saying any of these are shockingly unhealthy. So it's funny because they talk about like flavored yogurts, and they have added sugar. So the alternative is eat plain yogurt, which yeah, fuck off. Like what
Get a
kid wants to eat
child to
plain?
eat
And if you need to sweeten it
yogurt.
with honey, I'm like, oh, so add sugar.
Yeah.
Got it. So don't eat the yogurt with added sugar, but eat the yogurt without, and then add sugar. Okay,
And full
that makes sense.
confession, I have made that suggestion to parents and to clients in case they want to maybe pick and choose how much
Hmm.
sweetness they add. Or sometimes if you have the sweetness like drizzled on the top, you get just a different flavor experience. So it's not saying that honey on plain yogurt is a bad
No,
practice, but the
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 logic.
yeah, is like you're still adding sugar
Yeah.
to the yogurt.
Yeah, that's what you're doing. And if your kid's making it, they're probably gonna add a ton so it doesn't taste like crap. You know what I mean? Like we
Mhm.
like in my house growing up, we until probably I was in middle school maybe or maybe high school, like we never had sugary cereals, right? Like it was rare. And we'd have like grape nuts and all bran and maybe
Oh,
maybe honey nut Cheerios.
maybe some ground up cardboard.
But you know what I
Yeah,
would do? I would pour myself a bowl of grape nuts and I would put like
put sugar
six
on
tablespoons of
it.
sugar on it.
We did the same
Why
thing.
wouldn't you?
We're
Because
like, it tastes awful.
yeah, and now it tastes good and this milk is awesome afterwards. So, I mean, you can avoid this type of stuff, but a lot of times you're not really doing anything. And
Right.
so the third one is cereal, the same thing. It's sugar, 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 despite like it's super affordable, it's quick in a pinch, it's fortified with vitamins, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Energy bars, again, sugar, sugar, sugar. Okay, I guess what? Sugar is energy, so
I
I
know.
don't know what you're
What did
doing
you
here.
expect?
Yeah. Fruit snacks. I mean, a package of fruit snack, what is like 80 calories? Like
Yeah, it's
you
not much.
you can't have 80 calories of any food and have it be unhealthy, especially for a kid.
Right.
It's gone in about 12 seconds. Like, I
Right.
mean, they're burning through everything all the time. Like,
And
come
I
on.
mean, I'll say like none of, fruit snacks are not the same as eating whole fruit. You get a
Hmm.
different nutrient profile. Totally valid and fine, but I don't think this belongs on a shockingly unhealthy food list. Like when
Or
I think
even a
of
snack to avoid list.
yeah, like
Yeah.
mix it in. And again, as the parent, you get to make the decision if, okay, my child has plowed through like 3 packages of fruit snacks today. Maybe I should rein that in.
Yeah.
Or like the next day, maybe I'm going to have some fresh fruit and offer that as an alternative and just say like, we're going to save some fruit snacks for tomorrow instead. Like
Hmm.
that's all it takes.
Yeah. And we're talking about a snack. We're not talking about, like you
I
said,
know.
like every single time they eat. Yeah, if like they had a day full of just fruit snacks and, Captain Crunch, okay, yeah, we should probably have some other things in there. Also, they're probably not going to
Hmm.
feel great, but like that's not what we're talking. These are snacks. These are things just like have like, randomly throughout the day. And like Aaron's saying, if you have a even moderately like adequate, menu for the day that includes, some fruits and vegetables, like you're going to be fine, 100% fine, eating any of these. Then we have juice, which, okay, like sugar, sugar, sugar,
I
100,
know.
100
This
calorie
list
snack
should,
packs.
yeah, this list should just be like fear mongering against sugar for parents 101.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. I know. It's all the same thing. It's like, okay. 100-calorie snack packs, again, like 100 calories, like eat 100 calories of anything, and it's
yeah, negligible in the grand scheme
nothing
of
ever will
nutrition and
happen.
health. Hmm.
Yeah. Or even negligible in the course of a day. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like 100 calories is nothing. Have you ever had one of those like 100-calorie like little cookie packs? It's like
Yeah.
6 cookies that are like
There's not
this
much going
thick.
on.
There's nothing
Yeah.
there. And the last one is peanut butter, which just pisses me off. Like,
Yeah, we talked about this on our last
yeah.
fear
So,
factor.
okay, does natural peanut butter, like just ground peanuts, have less sugar? Sure. It's also a lot more expensive, right? It's not like accessible everywhere. Um, Peanut butter, like just Jif, is super calorie dense. It's way more affordable. Um, Kids love it. It's yeah. And again, the only reason they're saying this is because added sugar to it, which is like I could not care less about that. It's not like there's a cup and a half of sugar in a jar of peanut butter,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, context matters here. And
Mhm.
one of the things I talk to parents about with added sugar is, well, let's just take an objective look at where those added sugars are coming from and what nutrient package they're associated with. So like yogurt, peanut butter, energy bars, things like that, you're really going to get some other varied
100%.
nutrients that are valuable for that child eating that sweetened thing that makes it more palatable. And I've said this before, I'll say it again. It's only nutrition if you eat it.
Yep.
So for those parents that get so worried about, oh, I've got to get more veggies into my kid. I've got to get more protein into my kid. I've got to get less sugar in. I've got to get them away from those snacks. I've got to stop them eating that stuff. Well, first of all, I hope that I pointed out that the research says that's not a
Yeah.
very good strategy. It backfires. But secondly, you have to look at like what other nutrients you're likely taking out of your child
Hmm.
by avoiding that sugar or that,
Hmm.
vilified um, product. And one of the things I struggle with when I'm working with young athletes, like I've worked with school age athletes all the way into teenage years, if they are brought up in a very health conscious household where they don't have access to highly palatable, quick, processed, with sugar
Hmm.
added high calorie snacks and options, they're likely to be undernourished. And that's not saying that the parents not doing their job or they're eating too much whatever. It's because they don't have the right kinds of foods accessible and ready to
Hmm.
get into their bodies and they need more nutrition. Vegetables, whole grains, low fat, low sugar, this and that have usually have a lot of fiber. They, might cause the person to feel fuller quicker
Hmm.
versus something like, peanut butter or like a,
Hmm.
energy bar or something. And then if the child doesn't like it, they're not going to eat it. And they'll probably not eat much at home in
Hmm.
favor of going to that after school activity that has a bowl of chips on the counter and they'll
Hmm.
eat that instead. And so this is what happens. And I see this all the time in my practice. So it's not just what the research says, this is
Yep.
what happens. So,
Yeah. Yep. No, 100%. So to wrap up the 8 kid snacks that are shockingly unhealthy, my official review is boo to that.
two thumbs
Boo.
down.
Bad advice.
Yeah.
You
I
failed.
remember I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine whose daughter was probably around like 10 or 11 at the time. And it was just kind of off offhand sort of talking about how she's trying to get her daughter to expand her, her variety and eating options. And I observed her making a completely separate meal for her daughter every night, every day, so she said, one of the snacks that she's totally into right now, which, oh my gosh, they're just devoid of any nutrition at all, is those sugar snap peas. And I just
Right.
I was speechless. I was
Because it
like,
has sugar in the word. Like,
no, I think she just somewhere, and this was before social media was what it is. This was like 8 years ago, I would guess. Somewhere she got the message that because they taste sweet, because they have carbohydrates in them, they are devoid of any valid nutrition.
it's
And I'm
enjoyable,
sure,
so it must be bad.
oh my gosh, I was like, one of your child's favorite snacks is a vegetable, and that's still not good enough. Like, what do you want this kid to eat? And this starts from that fear-based messaging for parents that you've got, oh, that's not good for your kid. And I was just like, actually, give those to her every day. They have iron in them. They've got some protein, fiber. They're good. Like, they're teaching her that vegetables can taste good. Like, okay. Dietitian stamp of approval for that one.
What's next? You're gonna hate spinach too? I mean, come on.
Right. So I have okay, we could keep going all day. Like you said, we'll do another one. I have one more that I want to rail on.
Okay.
More that okay.
Is this the one I think it is?
Yes, this is Paul Saladino, Carnivore.
We're just gonna burn it all down at the end here.
Yeah, throw a match on it. This guy put out, so his shtick is all about like anti-seed oils, high consumption of meat and protein, and he rails against like processed foods. So this guy went into Dell's Children's Hospital in Austin, Texas, I believe it was, and made this TikTok going through their cafeteria and saying, he starts it off by saying, the healthcare industry and system does not care what they feed you, and they don't care what they feed your children. Let's go check this out. So already vilifying, okay, I'm not saying our healthcare system is perfect. It's far from it. I have a lot of opinions on that. But setting the stage for you already to be like, oh, I can't trust my child's doctor or the hospital I'm taking my child to. Yeah. Any parent who has had to sit in a hospital with their child for anything, whether it's like a run-of-the-mill cold that won't go away, or whether your child has been diagnosed with a heartbreaking terminal condition, it is the last thing a parent needs is to not trust the healthcare system, or to feel like their child is being poisoned in the hospital with food. So he goes through this cafeteria and he picks apart like chicken fingers and fries, and I can get a soda, and I can get Flamin' Hot Cheetos, and I can get, like, he goes through and picks all this junk food. And I'm calling it junk food because that's what he talks about. Picks all of this food intentionally, puts it on a tray, and he's like, this is what they're feeding your children. Well, first of all, that's not accurate, because
that's what you selected.
Yes. And having worked in a hospital, the cafeteria food is generally there for visitors, parents, even employees, the staff. Yeah. Yes. So what they're sending to the hospital rooms and what's available on the room menu can include those foods, but that is not all it includes. There's lots of different options. In his video, you can actually see a cooler with fruit and juices and ready-made sandwiches. Oh, he just walks past that. Like, we're just going to ignore
very intentional selections.
Yes. Yeah. And can we just appreciate that it is really effing stressful to be either caring for sick children as a practitioner or parent, or to be in that situation where your child is in a hospital. Having some comfort food, or having something quick that you know will taste good, that you know is accessible. Like, I'm not going to criticize anybody for choosing some fries and chicken tenders if that's what tastes good to you or your child in that moment. And I think it's really it's really deplorable that he went through and made this video,
Yeah.
and he's gotten raked across the coals,
It's
rightfully so.
it's disgusting.
Yeah.
It's just disgusting. I mean, first of all, like, you know, if you have a child who's really sick, right? Like really sick, any calories are important, right?
Yes.
Like what can they and what will they eat? That's more important than the nutrient profile of anything, because whatever they eat is going to give them energy that they can use to fight off, survive, whatever it is, right? Second of all, you got a kid who's like terminally ill. They don't get to have some like cake in their life, right?
Yeah.
They don't get to have cookies and just like some stuff that's like just fun and pleasurable and that they enjoy. You have to deny them that. Like, fuck off. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like what purpose do you think? You're not serving any kind of purpose. You're only being an asshole. That's all you're doing. It's just being just deplorable, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And it's such a gross thing to like, even the idea is just such a self-serving, um just disgusting idea, and then to go and do it. And I mean, I saw so many like stitches with this about just, I mean, people lighten him up, you know, dietitians, doctors, nurses, but mostly what I saw was parents who have had sick children in the
Mm-hmm.
hospital for extended periods. And just like, I mean, it was just, the attitude was like, how dare you? Like, how
Yeah.
dare you talk this way about a situation you obviously have zero understanding of, right? And demean or minimize or accuse parents of doing something like wrong, morally wrong, when they are just loving for and caring for their child. Like it's so gross.
Yeah.
I don't want to say I
I
hate this guy, but I hate what this guy does. And I might
well,
kind of hate this guy. You know?
there might be a piece of me that's right there with you, because I just think it's so low. I
Hmm.
mean, really, like, and this is where at the very beginning of the episode you had made a comment like maybe these people think that they're doing good things. This act I can't reconcile with any goodwill.
It's tough to
I
get
just
behind.
can't.
Yeah.
I can't understand where this person thinks this is helpful for anyone.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm really frustrated by it, because then I see, then you will see parents that take this message and internalize it and go, oh
Hmm.
my gosh, I should not be feeding my child these kinds of foods, especially if they have a terminal illness. I want to heal them through food, and they're
Hmm.
filled with that messaging. So then they try and set like these, sprouted toast with, you know organic avocado and, cucumber slices and whatever,
Vegan bacon.
yeah, vegan bacon in front of their kid, and their kid is like, can I just have an ice cream cone?
Yeah.
And
Can I just have something I
yeah.
like in my life that
Yeah.
just sucks right now?
Yeah. So that guy he can just continue to exist on the as the scum on the butt oil of the health
Social
industry,
media.
because
Yep.
I wish he would just be silenced. But anyway,
Yep.
that's why we do this discussion. So if you
Yeah.
come across any of these videos, and if it causes you to be like, oh my gosh, I thought this was okay for my child to eat, or if it causes you to start really scrutinizing food labels or ingredient lists, or to the point where like foods that your child has enjoyed that you like were kind of a regular part of your routine, if you start like really ratcheting down, there's actually a term called almond moms, which
Yeah.
have you heard of that? It's a
Yeah.
whole trend on social media. Almond moms are, moms who have gleaned too much from diet culture and are
Yeah.
now like helicopter parenting their child's eating habits. Don't be an almond mom. Oh
Well, what's
yeah.
funny is watching a few of uh Flav City's videos, I saw comments that said, "Oh, we have almond dads now."
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Nut job, Dad, more like it.
Right.
I do want to highlight just real quick a few accounts to follow that
Yes.
specifically highlight children's nutrition. I really like them. So there's Andy Does Healthy, there's Kids Eat in Color, Growing Intuitive Eaters, Feeding Littles, Happily Fed, and Abby's Kitchen. I will link all of these in our show notes so you can go and follow these people and unfollow, like retrain your algorithm. Let's unfollow the
Yeah.
butt boils.
The butt boils. Yeah. And just kind of to just put this out there. So I think it'll air in September. We're doing in August, we have a guest who is
Yeah.
a chef in a school kitchen. And so we're going to talk a lot
And a
about
dietitian.
and a dietitian. And so we're
Yes.
going to talk a lot about like kids and nutrition in schools, which will kind of be similar maybe to like hospital nutrition, but it's going to be, I think, a really great episode and really enlightening on because man, parents, these almond moms do really go hard on like school lunches and that kind of stuff,
Yes.
and just need to find something else to do. Like, like
I know. I know.
this is how you're spending your time. I mean,
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
uninteresting is your life?
Yeah. Put some
Get a
energy into
hobby.
something else.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll have Chef Brenda Waddles. She's my good friend, dietitian, chef. She can also explain like some of the regulations around school meals and why school meals really are faced with challenges that I can't even imagine trying to put meals into children. So that will be a great episode. Please watch out for that one.
I mean, first off, you're cooking for hundreds of people.
Yeah.
So there's one.
Let's see how that goes.
Yeah. Would you like to do better, Almond Mom?
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah. Well, do you have a meeting in the mundane?
Yeah. We had Matt and I had wanted to go camping in the mountains in Stanley, Idaho, which is just a couple hours from Boise. It's beautiful. It's in the Sawtooths. It's notorious for just having that like mountain range and lakes, and we haven't spent much time there. Well, it ended up like being rainy, cold. We changed our plans at the last minute. We went to this other place that was still only a couple hours away, and we went to Eastern Oregon. And I just have to say the whole trip was so spontaneous because we changed our plans at the last minute. And then we just kind of went with that. And we were like, let's just kind of, I did a little bit of reading like for some hikes and different things that were available, but let's just kind of see where things take us. So we stopped at this great little place and had lunch on Friday on the way there, which is something we would never do. We just want to get to camp, right? We kind of just wandered and went with our own schedule, did whatever we wanted. We napped on Saturday. It was fantastic. And I think we both just came away from that trip feeling like, the itinerary, the planning everything out and the sticking to, seeing through something, like packing the schedule with all the activities, just it has a time and a place, but we just really enjoyed being together and just getting out of town. We met a bunch of different campers. It was just a fantastic time and not attached to any very specific like schedule or objective. And so I think just that whole weekend was like,
heck yeah,
my heart feels really full, and just, it was wonderful.
That's awesome.
We didn't have to be doing anything super special, just hanging out, It was great.
Love it. Nice.
Yeah.
For me, I think this was last week. I had gone to bed. I was super tired and gone to bed pretty early, which usually means I start waking up earlier. It's like, I'd like to get more sleep. And my body's like, no, you just get up earlier now. But I woke up at like, I think it was like 5:15 or something, and tried to go back to sleep for 20 or 30 minutes. And finally around like 5:45ish, I was like, I guess I'll just get up, and got up, made a pot of coffee, sat down. The house was quiet. Sophie's usually up around 6:30, 6:45 if, she sleeps late. And so I just sat for like 30 minutes in a quiet house in the morning, right? Like there was no noise, and just sat at the dining room table and slowly drank my coffee. And I don't think I was even really on my phone. I just kind of sat and was like, this is a nice start to the day.
Oh, nice.
Just a little peace, a little quiet, no demands, like I wasn't working, I didn't have anything to do, no one was asking me for anything. And it's just like, I just got to sit here uninterrupted for
Yeah.
30 minutes. And it was really nice.
I love
Yeah,
that.
it's a good little moment.
And that was part of what Matt and I really liked about this weekend is there were moments, I mean, I had a book with me, but there were moments where we just sat and just, listen to the birds or like just kind of hang out. It was great. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like moments of just being very present, like moments that you are in, right? It's easy to be in moments that you're like mentally somewhere else and preoccupation and worries and stress. But if you're in a moment where it's just like, no, I'm only here, it's crazy how peaceful that can be and how good it is for your soul to like actually live in the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's blissful. Okay.
All right.
Well, thank you for listening.
Thank you. Remember, share, on your social media feeds or with someone in particular you feel like this would be helpful. Review the podcast, rate the podcast, subscribe. All that stuff is super helpful. We really appreciate everybody's support. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right.
Have a good one.